Okay, guys, got a real close-up shot of my hands and my clay. I'm going to be demoing for you. Look, looks like I've got a mask on, doesn't it? So you're going to be seeing this up close because I think I'm looking the wrong way. You're going to be seeing me up close doing the clay, which is very fun to work with. Very anyway, so I'm going to show you some clay properties, to talk about some clay properties, and then I'm going to show you how to manipulate. Now, I put out that recipe for everybody to use, and if you didn't have all the ingredients, maybe you've got some Play-Doh around the house. Um, if not, try to use that recipe. It just needs cornstarch, some flour. Was it flour, cornstarch, and water? Yeah, so you can do that. But in the meantime, with my gigantic hands, I'm going to show you a little bit about what we're going to do when we get back to sculpture. And hopefully when we get back, we'll have, maybe we'll have the kiln fixed and we can really just concentrate a lot in clay. Okay, so first, here's our clay. So what we're going to do is called wedging, okay? And I'm going to show you what we do. All you want to do is you just want to get a clump and you want to squish it together, but you don't want to spread it out and make like these big, like right here, this fold. If you were to let that, like if you were to push it together and leave those folds in like that, they would create air pockets, and in the kiln, it will explode. That's right. Yep. So you don't want to do that. We want to try to get all the air pockets out of it. So we're going to do this. We're wedging. So we're going to push a little bit forward, pull it in, turn it, and I'm pushing forward just a little bit let me do it this way so you can see. So I'm pushing it a little bit because we're trying to get all of the wrinkles out of it. So that's the big thing. We want to keep all of the wrinkles. And I'll tell you, in college, when we did our wedging of our clay, we would keep doing it until we got kind of the shape of a ram's head. And no, I didn't go to Carolina. I went to Meredith, but we'd still do it. And it's like when you're squeezing, right here, when you're squeezing it like this, you start to see like the horns of the ram on either side, and then you've got the nose. That's kind of like what we were ending up with. But you got to get all of the air bubbles out and make it as pretty as you can. Make it as um, squished together with no air. Okay, so for today's purposes, I'm going to just take a pinch of it, and I've gotten it wedged pretty good. Don't worry if you have some. So I've got some, like that's a big air pocket. I need to make sure that I get that out. So I'm going to squeeze that. Um, but what we're going to do today, the method that we're going to use, the two methods we're going to use today, is going to be you're going to get the air pockets out of it anyway. So if you see, I got a pretty good roll of clay there, okay? Um, that's shadow, that's not, okay, that's not an air pocket. So I want to take another pinch and we're going to make coils. So I'm going to roll it around a little bit in my hands, and then I'm going to lay it down and I'll start rolling it like this. And as you roll, you spread your fingers apart, okay? Bring it back. You'll see it starts expanding until you can get two fingers and you spread them apart. And what you want to try to do is get all of it the same width. You don't want this side very skinny or a very skinny piece in the middle and thick ones on the end. You're trying to get it the same. So if you see that one side, you see this right here is pretty thick. So I'm going to roll that a little bit separately from the others. And I'm going to try my best to make my coil as even as possible. Okay, so I've got a little bit there. All right, so I've got this piece of coil. So I'm going to start out, we're going to make a pot, and I'm going to start out by just rolling it up on itself. So you'll see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to try to do it in the air so you can see. Okay, so that would be the base. Now, I could get in here and I could smooth this all out. Just smooth it all out, make it really pretty, all of that good stuff. And then when you're starting to put your pieces together, you have to do what is called a score and slip. And honestly, we don't have that material at home. We don't have the kind of clay that we would use for a score and slip, but I can tell you what it, how we would do it normally. So what we would do is we would take some clay and I put it in a blender, and I have a blender at work. I mean, at school. So we put water in it and we blend it all up so it looks like when you go to Wendy's and you get one of those Frosties, it looks like that. So we would take our, let's just use this because this is, no, I don't want to draw on it. So let's just say a fork. A fork is good. We have tools at school, but if we were doing it here, we could use a fork. So what you would do is you would just come around the edges with your fork, and this is called scoring. And you can do X marks in it, however you need to do it, but what you're trying to do is give a rough edge so that the clay sticks. And so if I were to pick this up, you can see how I've scored. So I've put rough edges all the way in here. Now, what is that going to do? I'm going to take my slip, which is the liquid, just the liquid stuff, and I would take my paintbrush and I would dip it into the slip, which is like the Frosty, and then I would paint all around the edges with that slip. So what that does is like liquid cement that sets in between all of these little places that I've scored. Okay, so it's real liquidy and stuff. And so then when I make my next coil, and remember it's got the slip on it. So when I make my next coil, I'm going to attach it, but if you don't use the score and slip method with real clay that we are going to put into the kiln, then your piece is going to explode. Oh, you're down there. Your piece is going to explode. And not only will your piece explode, but it will explode on everybody else's. I think I told you, but just in case, I literally put a bunch of work into the kiln. When I opened it up, it was all dust. I had to get it out with a dustpan and a little hand broom. So the next time that we did it, somebody didn't score and slip and had air pockets, and it blew up again, but it didn't destroy everybody's, but all the pieces from theirs splattered onto everybody else's and made them like real jagged. So all the pieces stuck. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to stick any of our pieces to somebody else's, and we don't want somebody else's stuck to ours. Okay? So we need to make sure when we do this that we would score and slip right. All right, so I've scored. I've painted with my slip. I'm going to take this and I'm going to I would score this also. So then it's like teeth. So you've got one side that has those teeth and the other side that has the teeth, and you've got the slippery slip in it, and then you're going to put them together. So it makes a really good seal. So let's pretend that I've scored this and I've put the slip on, and then I would just start putting it on the edge, and I would just wind it around. When you get to where you meet, don't cut it off. It's like, don't cut it off. Just come in here, squish it in, and just go up to the second level, okay? And then we're going to do this all the way around. When you get through, you have two options. You can use your tool to smooth it out so it looks like one smooth piece, or you can leave it and let the lines in between, let this show and look more primitive. It's up to you. We, again, can't flatten this but so much because it's not the kind of clay that we use there. Um, you can try getting your clay wet to smooth it out some, and that's fine. But, I'll work on some more. But what you're going to do is you're going to keep building using the ropes, the coils. You're going to keep building until you get it as high as you want it. Now, I want to show you, if you decide you want to keep it going straight up, then you just build right on top of each other. But if you want it to come out a little bit, then when you make your next coil, let me get my coil rolled out like that. It's kind of a cool look, isn't it? Um, pull a piece out. Works better if you sing. Okay, so scored, put the slip on. If you want it to start coming out a little bit, then when you attach, you're not going to attach it directly on top. You're going to start sliding over a little bit. For example, it's not going to fit exactly on top of there. You're going to tilt it out just a little bit. And again, I get to the place, turn it again. I get to the place where I joined it before. And this particular time, it ends up at about the same spot. But we'll see if you can see, it's starting to tilt out some. Obviously, I'm going to clean this up a bit, but you see how it's tilting out because I'm not putting it right on top of each other. I've started putting it a little bit on the side of that coil. So when I keep building this higher and higher, I'm making my bowl or my cup, whatever I'm doing here, it's going to be coming out a little bit. And you have to be careful that you don't keep going out so that it'll start collapsing in on each other. It has to be close enough on that coil underneath to support the next coil and then the next coil. So you only tilt out just a little bit. And it's a little wobbly right now because it's still wet clay. Okay, so we're just going to go out. Once we get through with this, you would take a tool and you come in and either smooth it or leave it very primitive looking, but you have to make sure you don't have any gaps. See that right there? If that shows, if you see anything, that could explode, so you got to make sure. So what I tend to do is I would use my paintbrush and I would come in here on the edges to make sure that I've sealed it. Think about bricks and the concrete in between the mortar. You want to seal it and make sure. And then I could, if I wanted to smooth it, I could. I'm going to play with this some more, maybe tomorrow. And I'm sorry that I haven't gotten this so until today. We've just had a lot of meetings as teachers. And I will tell you that I'll send you out an email explaining how I'm going to be doing the art projects next week. So we have gotten some guidance now, and we're going to figure out what we're going to do. But just know my my light my light just went off. Let me see if I can turn this one on. Yeah, that helps. So we would use the tools that I have at school, and we would smooth it out. Here I have plastic forks and plastic knives, and I would try to smooth it out that way. But this is just to let you see that you can start practicing so that when we do get back, that we can get right into the clay. Now, for those of you, because some of the classes will be combined, so for those of you who aren't actually in the sculpture class necessarily and you want to do some of these, that's fine. Just play with it. And again, use the recipe that I sent out. And if you didn't get the recipe, let me know and I will send it to you. It's a video on YouTube that tells you how to make it. But if you look now, you can see that I've been smoothing out the bottom a lot more, and I would still work around the edges. And little tip, before I finish my pot or whatever I'm doing, I would always put a little bit of slip in here, and then I'd take my finger and I'd rub around in there to make sure that it's getting really smooth and I'm not having a crack in there either. So this is how you would continue just adding and adding and adding. Oh, I have one here. Your coils, and you want to try to make your coils the same thickness every time. See, this one's a little bit, so I'm just going to break that there. You want to make them about the same thicknesses every time because you don't want one coil up here really fat and one very skinny. So again, score, score, slip, slip, and start adding some more. And you go all the way around. Now, this one I broke up a little bit, so that's okay. Because I don't want a really thin piece and then a really wide piece. And so you'll see it didn't go all the way around, and that's okay. I'm attaching back here. I am attaching these two pieces, and I'm just sort of squishing them together because you want to try to overlap a little bit so you can make it sturdy. And then I don't have a piece there, so make another one. Make another one. Make a little dough ball, and then start rolling it out. Okay. It's really cool how that happens. All right, so I'm just going to do this. And if I'm smoothing this out, it works perfectly. Always remember, we score, score, slip, slip. Always. I guess I could probably tell you that the best way to think about that is score, slip, score. Okay, so I'm adding more and more. Try to round this up and then start rolling all this out. I want you to see. I like making the coils. We also are going to do a little, in just a second, we're going to do a little bit of a pinch pot. Most of you who've worked with clay in elementary will probably remember the pinch pot. Let's get that a little bit more. Okay, so I'll start here. And remember, score, slip, score. But we don't have that with us. We don't have the luxury of that right now. And I'm just continuing to build. I'm making my little pot. I'll show you in a minute what I want mine to be. Okay, so let's do some more. It's got a little bubble. Work that out. So I want mine to start coming in more. I don't want to keep going this way. I want it to come in a little bit more. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting to go a little bit more inside. So if you see that, you can see that it's not going further wide this way. I'm bringing it in some. And that's because I am making something specific here that's not going to be a cup. It's not going to be a bowl. I'll show you what it's going to be. And when I make what I want to make here, it is going to be more primitive because that's what I want. Okay, so let me roll out another one. I wish, just like you, that we were actually in the classroom doing this, and that's fine. But you know what? Tough times make geniuses out of all of us, and I intend that I'm going to be even more of a genius than I was before. And so you are too. So let's go ahead and let's make a coil here. I've got a bigger piece of clay this time. It's really fun working with clay. Anything that you do with your hands like this is very soothing and calming. And many people find it very relaxing to work with clay, and so do I. So I really enjoy doing this. So I've got a pretty long piece now that I can work with. And it looks pretty even. Rub that out a little bit more. Okay. I may be able to finish mine off with this. Okay, so I'm going to overlap a little bit there, and I would score, slip, and score. And then I bring this on in. And remember, I'm going inside now. You could probably see that it's starting to look like it's going to close itself up. Okay, so you see how it's come out a little bit, but now it's going in. That's the look I'm going for. A little bit more. I just think it's really cool that you can make clay out of something in your house that you've already got. So I was trying to figure out, now, how are we going to do anything like this? And, you know, Play-Doh is always good for something like this. You can practice with Play-Doh, and you can practice with this recipe I've given you. You can do that until we get back. And when we get back in the classroom, you'll be ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to finish up what I'm making here. I'm going to attach this here, attach them together, and again, score, slip, score. And I'll have to make some little adjustments, and that's fine. And I'm through. Can you tell what it's going to be? If you can't, that's okay, because I can tell you. Little work needs to be done there. Okay, it's a beehive, or it's a beehive, but like a wasp nest, that you see up in the trees that you don't want to go anywhere near. I love doing these. And so then after I got this all sealed up and ready and dried out and ready to go in the kiln, then, the paints that we have at school are paints that we wouldn't have to fire it first and then paint it and then fire it again and then put the color. We wouldn't have to do that. We can do all of it at one time with the paints I have. So let's just talk real quick about some more things about firing in the kiln. When we first create our pieces and they're wet, this is called greenware. When we put them in the kiln and we cook them, I like to say that we're cooking them, but when we fire them in the kiln and they come back out, they feel like stone, and that is called bisque. This is probably very fragile, but bisque can be easy to crack also, but it comes out feeling like stone. It's rough, and then you would paint it. If you're doing typical glazes, you would paint the glaze on like a color glaze, and then you would put it back in the kiln and you would fire it, and then that glaze is on it, and then you would put another clear glaze on top of it, and you'd fire it again. So when we let the clay, when we're first working with the clay, this is called greenware because it's very wet and it's green. If we were to take clay and we wanted to get it so that we could carve real easy in it, you'd leave it out to dry a little bit. And if you could pick it up and it would bend just a little bit, not like this, because see, we can really bend it. But if it would bend just a little bit, but still felt a little bit dry, that is called leather hard. And that is where you can do a lot of really good carvings. But you better have your everything attached that you want to, because when you try to attach leather hard, it's not going to work. Once the clay starts drying out, you can't attach anything to it. And if you try, it will blow up in the kiln. So we want to always be prepared with ours, but we also want to be prepared with everybody else's. You want to try to take care so that nobody else's gets damaged also. Okay, so letting it dry a little bit where it will move. So I would say that you could do it a little bit. The biggest thing is that you feel like I could carve into this and it doesn't feel like cold and malleable. Then it would be leather hard. When it's fired one time and it comes out looking like stone, that's called bisque. And then once it's fired, then you're fine and it's your actual project. It's like your color and all. Now what we have at school is a paint that from this point we could paint it green. So we would paint whatever colors we would want on it. When we fire it one time, it would then come out painted the color we wanted and already glazed. That's what we use at school. It's just so much easier than having all these different color glazes and having to fire 3 times. When we get back to school, that will be something that we can fire, more pieces. See, I've got to smooth that out right there. But we can fire by doing it so we don't have to fire it so many times that we can do more pieces. So I fill up the kiln every time, fire it. We fill it up again, fire it. But by not having to do 3-step firings, that works. We can get a lot more projects done. Okay, so this is coil method. I don't know if I've got enough. I could take that apart and do it, but let's take some of it off. Okay. Because we're just playing with it right now. And that's all I want you to do. I'm not asking you to make a masterpiece because you're probably going to work with this and then you seal it back up. You can take it back apart, just like Play-Doh, seal it back up in a container, little, one of those, not Tupperware, but you know what I'm talking about. You can get them from the grocery. Your mom has probably 100 of them around the house. But get one of those and seal it up, and you can just keep working with it over and over and over. I'm trying to make a ball here. Okay, so if you've done this in elementary school, this works too. People can make some absolutely gorgeous pinch pots. And so all I'm going to do is I've got this ball of clay. Let me get that ball up. Let me get that out. I've got this ball of clay, and I'm going to start just by pushing my thumb right in the middle of it. So you see I've got a hole. So I'm going to start just by pushing down and pulling. So you push down in there and you start pulling the sides up. You can smooth it out. You can make yourself a nice little pot. It works really well. The other thing I need to tell you, since we're working on walls here, like with the pinch pot, and it's the same thing there. That's why I said make the coils the same size. You don't ever want to put a piece of clay in the kiln that's more than a 1/2 inch thick. So if it turns out to be thicker than a 1/2 inch on any wall, we have to poke a hole in it because the thickness will explode also. I'm really telling you a lot of things that are exploding here, and that's okay because that's what happens with clay. But you know what? You can plan and plan and plan. But clay takes a life of its own. So every time you go put something in the kiln, you never know if you're going to get it out like you thought. We just don't know. And that's kind of the beauty about this art is that you don't ever know exactly what it's going to look like or how it's going to turn out or if it turns out at all. And sometimes the ones that explode, you can get some really interesting pieces on there. And that may be just trying to make the best of a bad situation, but I've seen some really beautiful pieces that got splattered. So you see, I've kind of rounded this out, and I'm going to have to smooth it some more. But it's really cool. All the kids I knew in elementary made all these cupcake things with this pinch pot. But if you see, just from a pinch pot, you can make a nice little container. Okay. So it's an easy way to craft out something really pretty. It's like I might do this and then decorate it in some really cool colors or whatever. And you could also look at that right there. So that would be it. That's a big air bubble. That would have to be worked out. So I would start that one back over. I'm not going to for time, but you can see that this, if I put a lot of decorations, I could actually carve in it, not necessarily with my pencil, but I could carve decorations in it. If you've got stamps or you want to take something, maybe a leaf, and press into it and get a nice little impression, you can do that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this. But feel free to play around with it. So you've got your technique now, but just have a good time with it and enjoy what clay does for you. Just playing with it is very um, satisfying, as you guys say. It's very sort of zen kind of thing. It makes you really calm down and eases some stress, and you get all into it. You don't realize that you've let 30, 40 minutes go by. I just looked at my timer here, and we're 31 minutes in it, and I've just been having a good time, and I could sit here and work on it some more. So it's really fun to do, but it's also um, stress relieving and relaxing and just fun to manipulate it. So try doing it some. Take pictures of what you've done. Send it to me on through my email, and then, like I said, we'll have some time where I'll give you some instructions about how class is going to look like once I get everything finished up. We've been having a lot of meetings, so you can imagine. But the big point here is you are going to have art, so that's a good thing. So I want you to try and see what you guys can do and send me some pictures. Um, but we'll probably be working in classroom after a while, but I did want you to see this, and I do want you to play some. I'm really happy about it. It's really, the more I work with it, the more I like. But like I said, working with clay, you can have a tendency to get to the point where you don't even know about time passing. And you guys that have been with me know that that's what I like. I like that moment when you don't really know that time's passing and you're just having such a good time and you're in the moment, and life's going on all around you and you don't know it because you're in your zone. And that's what I like. So we've been working here for almost 33 minutes, and it felt like it was 5. So for today, this is going to be your lesson in clay, and we'll work with some other things too. But I want you, especially you sculpture kids, to try to work with this so that when we do get back, we can get a jump start on it. Okay. So try your coil. Try a little bit of the coil method, and then try a pinch pot and see if you can't make it something really cool. Okay. In the meantime, miss you all. Love you much. Have a good one.